least, we're going to put our hover on our piece. So right now we've got our grid, we've got our text styled, we've got our images in, the grid's 4 across, 2 rows, all that good stuff. But if you look at the final, we have this little hover that goes over and it turns color and we have the word view. Now, if you were paying close attention, you would notice that I originally put in the style align right rather than text align right. I have gone ahead and fixed that. But we're going to go in and we're going to style our overlay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in the span element with a class of overlay. So you can go ahead and copy this and paste that into each of your products. So it's going to go right after the figure, right before the image. So go ahead and go into the HTML and copy and paste, and go ahead and paste that in to each of your pieces. All right, go ahead and save. So the first thing that we need to do once we've put that in is to go ahead and style that class. So go ahead into your CSS and add in that overlay class. And then we're going to add in a first rule, which we're going to add in a partially transparent background color. And you can pick any color that you want. So go ahead and we're going to add in a class overlay. I'm going to do background color. And I'm going to go ahead and RGB color picker. I'm going to use a red. So let me go ahead and pick a red. Oh, sure, that looks lovely. Copy that. And I want to RGBA. All right. Save that. Okay. Awesome. It says view and it's red. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So one of the things you'll notice is it's just sitting up here on the top, right? That's not really what we're looking for. What we want it to do is to be the exact same size as the image and to go over the image. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to style that overlay class to have a width and height of 100%. Then the other thing I'm going to have you add is top and left properties to 0. All right, width 100%, height 100%, left 0, and top is also going to be 0. And then we're going to set the position to be absolute. All right, now I'm going to refresh this. And that's not what we're looking for, is it? Think about what we just did in the previous examples. Why do you think this now fills the whole page? So, because by default, everything is going to be relative to the browser window, we've set our overlay to be absolute at 0, 0, top left. Now, if we're looking here, before we were looking, we set our price to be absolute, and we told it that that was relative to description. Now, you might say, well, we told things to be relative to our description, but that's only if they're descendant of that. So because our overlay class is not descendant from our paragraph, it doesn't apply to that. And on top of it all, we wouldn't want it to be relative to the description. So what you need to find is what is the thing that contains your span class. So our span is contained within our figure. So we need to tell it to be relative to the position of the containing element. So what we're going to want to do is to change this so that while our overlay is absolute, let's go ahead and have our figure be position relative. Okay, let's refresh. Awesome. Well, we are now at least covering our image, but we're also covering our text. So it covers the entire figure, including the caption. Now, for purely aesthetic reasons, I only want it to cover the photo. I don't want it to cover the caption or the price. So that means we're going to need to create a div that contains only the overlay and the photo. Now, we're using a div because there's no semantic context for this container. So what I want to do is just wrap this div only around the span with the overlay and the image. And then we're going to want to give it a new class because divs don't really exist, spans don't really exist unless they have classes or IDs attached to them. So go ahead, wrap your span class and your image in a div and give it the class thumbnail. Go ahead and you can just copy that. Make sure that you close your div as well. And you're going to want to do that to all of your pieces inside your HTML. So go ahead, I'm going to add that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I close that div before I get to my fig caption. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here and here and go ahead and just go through. Oops. There you go. Two more. There we go. Okay, terrific. Now we need to style this new thumbnail class. All right. Now, relatively position it to this new container. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take this out of our figure. And we're going to pop it here. All right. Refresh. Woohoo! Awesome. Now we want to style this text. Now feel free to change any of this that you would like. I'm going to use that. The color's going to be white. It's going to be bold. 200% font size, padding 40%, and center. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is going to be in my overlay. I'm just going to add that in. And go ahead and refresh. All right. Now, you see this little tiny gap where the overlay actually extends past the image? So by default, there's this small little space that is reserved below the element. Now, what we want to do is have our thumbnails be block so that it kind of gets rid of that. So what we're going to add in is this rule, which is going to get rid of that. So just add that in. So it's basically saying this only applies to the thumbnail grid, images, and boop, there we go. So what this has done is because inline elements have that, we're saying no, it's going to be a block, but it's only applying to these guys. And because they're inside of other inline elements, it's just making that image, like that block. So the last thing we want to do is make it so that we only have this when we hover over. We don't just want it to be up all the time, but only when we hover. So we're going to use this hover pseudo class to basically say that when we hover, we are going to see our piece. Now, what I want you to note is that we've set the opacity of the color in our RGBA. Now we're setting the opacity of that whole span. So when I go into this CSS, right now, the background color has a certain opacity to it. In fact, I'm going to bump that opacity up a little bit. You see it's a little bit darker. What I am saying here when I make this opacity 0 is that the whole thing, including the word view, is going to now go away. But when I hover, this is going to show in full. Yay! Now, you can go ahead and add a transition to that so that when we mouse over, we have this like fade in. And there's more CSS tricks about transitions that we'll get into later when we're talking about animation. For now, just go ahead and add that to our CSS. So now you see it fades in. And I'm sorry, my cat is going bonkers behind me, if you can hear that. So you can go ahead and transition with different properties if you want. And you can just kind of play with it to get it to act how you like. But overall, we more or less have it behaving the way that we want it to.